says right here on the hammer, whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Hold on, who decides who's worthy? Does the hammer decide?
Yes.
It can't decide. It's a hammer.
You said it's a magic hammer.
Yeah, but it can't make decisions.
If Harry Potter's wand can make decisions, why can't Thor's hammer?
Okay, if you're gonna start comparing wands and hammers, can't even take you seriously.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history. I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about today?
Wham! Pow! This week we're talking about comic books.
Now, this is an interesting kind of departure because this isn't so much a trope, right? This isn't like, let's talk about all the times that this same thing happened in a sitcom. It's more of like, what is the sitcom version or representation of this thing, right? Like, if you're a lawyer, that would color your experience of watching, Night Court. If you're a doctor, that would color your experience of watching Doogie Howser, And so we've got 4 sitcom episodes that all deal in some way with the world of comic books. To talk about it with us, we have our close personal friend, Jordan D. White, senior editor of Marvel Comics. Now, Jordan.
Yes?
I was thinking about it. Our relationship contains many sitcom tropes. You and I, we met in college, right? Kind of like
that's a trope.
Ted and what's his face? Marshall and many others. Mm-hmm. We even were briefly roommates for like a summer there.
Yeah, for a summer, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were in a school play together. That's a major sitcom trope. You were a big presence at our college radio station. That is a huge sitcom trope we haven't covered yet, but almost every sitcom that has a school has an episode about a school radio station, right? And incidentally, I think you're the first person I know who ever did a podcast. You've been podcasting since like 2003 or something, right?
No, it was. I think my podcasting started in 2007, but still, that was relatively
still goes back.
Early days.
Yes, you were in my movies in college, my homemade movies, also a sitcom trope. You were, I think, the first peer of mine whose wedding I went to, because you got married fairly young. We went to that.
College, yep.
Definitely a sitcom trope. And there was even one time where when I was living back here and you were still in Binghamton, we had to talk about something. We met at a diner halfway, just like Jim and Pam from The Office.
Oh, you guys have quite a history.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow, okay. All
sitcom tropes galore, but you're not here to talk about any of that. You're here because we're talking about comics.
Yeah.
Now, I learned just this morning from my favorite website, AIPT Comics. It says, X-Men senior editor Jordan D. White reveals he's begun work on Venom and Hulk.
True.
Now, just to my knowledge, at various times you've been the editor of X-Men, the new Star Wars, Marvel Comics, Deadpool, etc.
Yes, all of those things and others. I was on Daredevil for a little while and Guardians of the Galaxy a bunch and all sorts of things. I'm literally we're recording this on a Sunday. I'm about to start the week that my last issue of X-Men is meant to go to press tomorrow. So I will be finishing up my X-Men run and starting on Venom. I'm already working on Venom because, you have to work on months of things all at the same time. But I'm already working on Venom and Hulk as well. And those are what I'm taking over.
So give us just like the 2-minute career day version. My sort of understanding, if a comic book was a TV show, the editor would be like the executive producer.
Yeah.
Is that kind of right?
That's pretty right. Basically, an editor is, especially an editor at Marvel Comics, needs to make sure the comic book goes to press and goes on sale when it's supposed to, and then it's as high quality as possible when it does that. So at every step of the way, I'm working with the creators. I hire the writer. They write the script. I read it. I give notes on it. We get the script to the artist. They start sending in layouts and then pencils and inks, and we're given notes on those if they need them. The colorist colors it, same thing, and then the letterer will the letterer will apply the script to the art, and then we'll do final notes on it, usually the week it goes to press, and send it out and make sure it's as great as it can be.
And how much of your job is people going like, I want Wolverine and Kitty Pryde to get married. No, you can't do that. I want Deadpool to kill Spider-Man. No, you can't do that. Like that kind of stuff.
Those ones in particular are ridiculous. And I think anybody I've hired to write a story knows well enough like what the kind of boundaries they're looking for. But there have certainly been stories that people have pitched that I've been like, we can't do that. We can't get away with that.
Yeah, I just have to think that's what comics are, right? Like these characters have been around for like 80 years, and it's all these crazy like, oh, what if this guy teamed up with that guy and that guy turned out to be a bad guy? And so I have to think that you've got to be like the arbiter of a lot of that stuff if you have different writers coming and going.
Yeah. I mean, so I have an example in my mind. Do you know the character Nightcrawler?
Of course.
So you know how Mystique is his mother?
I did not know that.
Okay. So at some point again, I don't know exactly when, late 90s, early aughts maybe, they revealed that Mystique was his mother. But when they revealed it, they also then eventually revealed this father who was like a demon kind of character. I mean, he was really a mutant. It's It's Azazel, who is in X-Men First Class, the red Nightcrawler, basically, right? So they went, that's the father. And not a lot of people loved that, including, again, Chris Claremont. And for many years, Chris Claremont...
You're saying that comic book fans would have opinions that are...
okay. For many years, people would say, can we just undo that? Can we just like casually dismiss that and say no and instead make it what Chris Claremont had originally intended, which was that Mystique and Destiny, who are the lovers, were both his parents. And we were like, no, we can't just ignore it. Like, that story happened and it existed, and it's very explicit, not graphically sexually, but like it's explicit in like you see things that it's like it wouldn't make sense to just go, yeah, that's not
right.
true.
You can't just wave it away.
She was in a coma.
Right. It doesn't you can't just quickly do that. But we actually did do it. We did undo it recently, and the thing that made the difference was the writers going, no, we have a way to do it that acknowledges and works with the things that make it locked in, and successfully can weave through that and undo it and make it so Mystique and Destiny can be his parents. So Mystique is actually now kind of not his mom and kind of his dad, but still she's a woman, so still kind of his mom.
So how big is the database that holds all of this canon? And like, how do you go... What if you don't remember something? Like, how do you go to look it up?
Then it doesn't get remembered. Now, here's the thing. It's up to the individual editor how much they care about those things. Because I was sort of like it doesn't feel right to me to just wipe it out when it was so specific. But there are other times when you just go, no, I don't want a current story to be shackled by old stories, especially really old stories. Like, again, we've been doing this, I was not involved, but Marvel has been doing this since the 60s or earlier, depending how you count it. Sometimes they like to count it all the way back to Marvel Comics #1. And you can't actually be beholden to all of that. We do our best. And do we sometimes contradict ourselves? 100%. Sometimes good stories come out of that where you go, let's explain that. Other times, terrible stories come out of that. We just keep trying to do our best to make the stories as good as possible. And sometimes that means going, don't worry about that old thing. Even though
they have enough trouble keeping it straight with like a movie series that has 6 movies, right? And then 5 years later, they're like, forget that other one. Yeah, you're supposed to stay faithful to something that happened in like 1963.
Well, it happens in sitcoms too, right? They just literally just go, that didn't work. Never mention it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Siblings disappear from existence.
Don't get us started on that.
Age 5 years over one summer, right?
Exactly. One of them, the one where one of the first ones we're about to talk about, Bob, has that happen, and we'll probably get into it.
Yeah, I don't think I even knew about that. Now, Amy, what is your experience with comics?
Absolutely nothing. I am one of those people who, I had friends growing up who were kind of into it, but I was never into it. And then as the movies started becoming a thing, that's like my only awareness of any of this is because of the movies and like Marvel and DC and all that stuff that has happened. And I'm like, I have a passing acquaintance with it now.
So you are going to entrench the stereotypes that we see in some of our sitcoms that women don't care about comics.
Well, and the stereotypes that the internet got real mad about when I was reading about the Big Bang Theory episode that we're going to watch. Like, people were not happy with the way that was portrayed.
Sure, we can talk all about that. All right, so Amy, what is our lineup? What are the shows?
This week we are watching Bob, Season 1, Episode 1, Mad Dog Returns, The Simpsons, Season 7, Episode 2, Radioactive Man, Big Bang Theory, Season 6, Episode 13, The Bakersfield Expedition, and Woke, Season 1, Episode 1, Rhymes with broke.
Yeah, so starting with Bob, this is from the early 90s. This is, I believe, the third of Bob Newhart's sitcoms.
Yes.
So are you familiar with the other Bob Newhart sitcoms, Jordan?
I did not ever watch the Bob Newhart show, but I saw Newhart as a young person, and I watched Bob. Well, I should say I watched at least some of Bob Season 1.
Right, this one that we're talking about.
Yeah.
When it was on the air. When it was on
so Season 2 was like a totally different thing. At the end of Season 1, everybody gets fired, and Bob goes back to being, in Season 2, a greeting card writer.
Wow, okay.
And
So
cartoonist.
I remember when this came out also. I loved anything that was a show or a movie or something about creative people and the creative process. Even like Misery, the movie Misery. It's like, that was probably not most people's takeaway, but I was like fascinated by it. Also, it's a manuscript, and first he sends it to his publisher. Like, I totally ate that stuff up. So yeah, I definitely was on board with this as a kid, but when I look back on it, I'll say this. When I was running by you the different options for what we could talk about, I was originally thinking more like, we would do the trope of superpowers, do sitcom episodes where somebody touches a toaster and gets magic superpowers or something. And you immediately brought up this, and I had kind of forgotten about it. And then, I remember being really into it at first, but then I also remember the show, I feel like it didn't last, and I don't remember mourning it, Yeah. So what happened?
Well, so at the end of Season 1, the ratings were not great. It was in the Friday night block that had The Golden Palace, which was the spinoff of Golden Girls.
Sure.
Designing Women in its later years, and Major Dad also in its kind of later years. And at the end of that season, Bob is the only show that didn't get canceled.
Okay.
So that was the end of Golden Palace.
But it got retooled.
Designing Women and Major Dad that season for the Friday night lineup. And then Bob got completely retooled. We kept, though, Lisa Kudrow, who was the sister's good friend in some of the later episodes in Season 1. Yeah, sorry, the daughter's good friend. So in Season 1, we didn't see her in this episode, but Lisa Kudrow is a supporting character throughout Season 1 and 2.
So it at the time, and the other thing was, so I was super into comics already at that point in my life, and Marvel put out a tie-in comic. Somewhere in my collection, I did not take the time to dig it out because my collection is a mess right now, like a disaster. But somewhere in my collection, I have Mad Dog #1, and what I remember about it is it's a flip book. Going one direction, on one side of it, you get the Silver Age classic old school drawn Mad Dog of Bob's vision, and on the other side you get the dark and gloomy hyper edgy version of it. What's his name?
The Tim Burton version, right?
Frank Miller. So let's just spell out the basic idea of this. This is Bob Newhart. We're 1992, so he's coming back as now this veteran sitcom guy, and the premise of this show is in the past he's been a psychiatrist. What was he in the other one?
He ran
ran an inn.
An inn. It was based on Faulty Towers.
Yeah.
Okay, so now he's a comic book artist, or a former comic book artist.
We love all these little crossovers because Bob Newhart loves to do these weird little crossovers, right? The last episode of Newhart has him waking up in bed with his wife from the Bob Newhart show. Well, one of the things at the beginning of the Bob Newhart show that kind of runs throughout that show is that his mom is disappointed in him for becoming a psychiatrist because he gave up drawing cartoons.
Oh, okay. So yeah, when this starts, he's a greeting card artist, right? And we understand he used to be a comic book artist, but no, his daughter doesn't even know that. And then he sort of gets called back to duty. Now,
right, there were 12 episodes or 12 issues.
But yeah, the story of this episode is going to be he's called back into the comic book world. They're offering him a bunch of money to basically reboot his comic character, right?
Yeah.
And
reboot Mad Dog.
Yeah. And so there's this character, Harlan something. Did anyone catch his name? He's a young, aggressive.
Yeah, Harlan Stone.
Okay, Harlan Stone. And so the idea is he's the writer and Bob is the artist, right? And
that's ridiculous too.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't bring Bob back to draw it.
Well, and we watched a couple of the subsequent episodes and they really portray it as the writer and the artist sit in a room together and sort of figure out together okay, why don't you draw him punching somebody and I'll have him say, take this punch, I can't imagine that's how it works.
No, look, nowadays everything is on the internet. Nowadays you don't have to live in New York City to make comic books, and in fact most writers and artists don't.
Right.
So we are, doing email and sometimes doing Zoom calls with people, but mostly email, right? There was a time when they would physically have to be there. So back in the 90s, probably most people who made comics were still in New York City. Yeah. But they didn't tend to sit in the room and make it together. I mean, infamously, back in the 60s and early 70s when Stan Lee was doing it, he would very much give them a very brief story, a paragraph, and go all right, go off and draw that. And then the artists would really lay out the story entirely themselves. By this point, at Marvel, while they were still doing the Marvel method, it wasn't a paragraph. It was still it was much more of maybe some pages of stuff that the artists would then draw. But meanwhile, at DC, they were doing full script at that time as well. They were doing here's what happens in the first panel. Here's
that's kind of what I assumed. I figured
that's how we work now.
Scripted.
That's how it is now. They're all full script.
Yeah. And so the reboot is going to be, like we said, much more violent. In the reboot...
the Harlan wants it to be much more violent.
Yes.
And Bob is no.
Right, that's their pitch.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that. He goes off on how, having the little buddy character, sidekick character is homoerotic. And obviously Penny, or whatever her name is a beard.
Yeah,
and
there's
he's
a lot...
Bob is angry that his whole story is being upended.
Yeah, first of all, there's definitely some of the 90s gay panic stuff here and there with Bob just in his own understated way.
That is also from, what is it called? Seduction of the Innocent, the Frederick Wortham classic that he said Batman and Robin had homoerotic.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm not familiar with that particular thing, but
that's
clearly...
that was the thing that caused the comic book code.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, we get lots of... I'd say in general, and they even call this out in some of the other episodes, that Batman is supposed to be the sort of analog to Mad Dog. He's got this sidekick buddy who's like Robin, and in the 90s, you had Robin died in the comics, right?
He did,
and you generally had this lean towards, like I mentioned, the Frank Miller thing, the sort of let's make comics dark and violent and stuff. The Frank Miller Dark Knight thing, correct me if any of this is wrong, that was sort of the loose inspiration for the Tim Burton, let's make Batman darker and scary.
Well, yes, although... Have you watched those movies recently? Because let me tell you something. In 1989, when Tim Burton's Batman movie came out, it was yes, they're taking Batman seriously. This movie is dark. And same with when the sequel came out, when Batman first. Yeah, that's right. Batman is not a joke. You watch those movies now, they're so ridiculous.
Yeah,
They're so
so
silly.
light and funny, and then you go to actual like Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, and you're like, now that's dark.
Or Matt Reeves, and it's like, you can't even watch it. Yeah, what I would say is the Tim Burton and Schumacher ones, they're still visually dark. They're goofy, but he did have the idea.
He wore a black costume.
Yeah, but honestly, that was kind of a breakthrough. You know, like, what if his costume was black leather instead of gray spandex? Well, he didn't do that as much in those ones. He just more kind of like whispered. Yeah.
It definitely didn't sound like Adam West,
No.
though.
If you compare it to Adam West, it is darker.
Yes, and I think
it still shares DNA with Adam West.
And I think that's what that contrast is what this Bob thing is trying to tap into. Batman used to be goofy and campy, and now in the 90s, he's become darker.
What year did this come out?
1992.
92. I'm trying to think if it was before or after Batman had his back broken.
By Bane?
By Bane, yeah. I'm not sure. I can't remember what year that was. That was right after. That was shortly after Superman was killed. So yeah, it was like an edgy, dark time for comics. I mean, the Dark Knight Returns, and that was in the mid '80s, but like it had a long shadow. That and Watchmen, they both had really long shadows that like. Yes, cast comic books into darkness. I know Alan Moore, who made Watchmen, has often said like. Comics went through all this because I was having a bad year one time. Like I was unhappy, and now like all comics are grim.
Now everything's sad.
And for decades to come, right? Sin City, and what's the other big Frank Miller one?
Besides
that
Sin
they
City,
made a movie of.
300.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like really, like you said, that those things cast this huge shadow. And plus, it's the 90s, so you got a little bit of that Tipper Gore sort of like, is media too violent? You know, all that stuff is kind of going into the stew here. So that's the sort of overarching premise is you're going to have Bob kind of come out of retirement, return to the office. We're going to meet all these wacky characters at the comic book office. And this show is going to be like half family sitcom with Bob and his wife and daughter, and half wacky workplace sitcom with Bob butting heads with the younger and more, more 90s-y, comic book creators. So what was your impression of this, the way they present this? It's a smaller operation, obviously.
No, yeah, but honestly, it wasn't unrealistic. I mean, it takes place in Silly World, but other than that, like, no, it was like, oh yeah, that's like relatively accurate. I mean, again, more old school than what we do now. Again, artists rarely are ever in our office physically, but from what I understand of the old stuff and what I know of the current, it was actually like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. Now, what do we think of Mad Dog as a character, right? We should say he's a mild-mannered guy, right? So you're supposed to understand this is supposed to be like sort of wish fulfillment for Bob, or maybe when he was younger. He's a mild-mannered guy. And then what happened that he was a veterinarian, and for some reason he has the adrenal glands of a Doberman Pinscher.
Right. Something went terribly wrong in his veterinary experiment.
Okay.
And
so not dissimilar to Dogman in some ways.
Well, I was going to say, I am not familiar with this Dogman you speak of. Dogman was one of the characters in my comic book company that I made with the local kids in my neighborhood. I drew Red Dragon, and my friend Matt Lovechuck down the street made Dogman.
Well, he is not the person who got rich off of Dogman, it turns out.
Okay, so now that we've sort of established what this show is about, I'm going to throw out my hot take here.
Okay.
I made a little plus and minus column for the show Bob.
And they all ended up in the minus.
Well, no, I have plus sweaters.
Okay.
Sweaters. Okay.
I think Bob has amazing cardigan sweaters.
He does have good sweaters.
The minus is no good ideas.
No, it's not a good show. It's not a good show. It's not super funny. Now, we didn't talk about this at all, but like, my relationship with sitcoms is that if you say to me, do you like sitcoms? My answer would be no. Generally. Now,
welcome to our show.
Well, but that said, watching the episodes kind of made me go, okay, well, I guess that's not 100% accurate. When I was young, I liked watching, I watched everything. I watched anything. Sure. I was a child, right?
Yeah.
And I loved sitcoms. At some point, the thing that I think of as a sitcom, which is the multicam live in front of a studio audience sitcom, at some point my brain went, those are terrible. What are you doing? Stop. And I don't watch them anymore. Now, the fact is that two of the things we watched tonight are not that at all. And so I was like, oh, okay. So like if those count as sitcoms, then I still like sitcoms.
Sure. That's right. I went through the same thing. We talk about this a lot on the podcast. We both experienced that, but I guess the difference is that we sort of dipped back in.
Yeah,
like,
I did never go
there
back.
came a point for me where it started being like, oh, if I need to throw something on like before I go to sleep or something, a sitcom is like kind of what I'm looking for.
But there are single camera half-hour comedies that I love. From all of it. Like I mean, listen, I watched the entire series of The Office, and that's obviously a sitcom, but it's just not that kind of sitcom. And I watched Arrested Development, and I watched probably other ones that I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, you came back into it sort of at around the same time we did, and that was the entry back in. Yeah. And then, I mean, at least for me, I think it was like New Girl that sort of, and How I Met Your Mother that sort of sucked me back into like the kind of more old school looking multicam shows.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say this. In terms of the podcast, we love the old school multicams because they're tropey, they're fun and disposable. And what we've come to, understand more and more is that similar to something, let's say like a kind of music, like punk music or something that's like very sort of simple in its nature, but there's still definitely good and bad versions of it. Watching this one, the disappointment is, like there's not a lot of good ideas. The comedy isn't that strong. It's very telling that usually when we go back to a sitcom that didn't last like this from the 80s or 90s, the supporting cast is stacked with like, oh my God, it's John Bernthal before The Walking Dead, or oh, it's Jennifer Aniston before she was on Friends. Nobody, I mean, you mentioned Cujo comes on later, but nobody in this cast, except for the daughter who's from the movie The Player and a handful of other movies, but nobody in this cast is recognizable or like fun. Like even Iris, the surly, the older coworker is still kind of like,
don't touch my stuff.
Yeah, like she's a good idea for a character, but you watch it all and you're kind of like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
It didn't go anywhere.
100% agree. 100% agree.
I think the jokes, right? He's doing the same thing that he did in all of his other shows, which is like, I guess I have to be the butt of the joke this time. Well, I'm going to sit down now. And like they have the audience is just in love with the fact that they're seeing Bob Newhart. And so they're laughing and cheering. And I'm looking at Jay like,
maybe they're not.
Maybe they're not. But I was like, what's funny? Like, what is, this is not, I'm not, they're enjoying it. I'm not.
I even got thinking, Bob's deal here reminded me of how I felt about Yoda in the prequels, where in the original movie, Yoda will occasionally say something backwards. He'll occasionally go, strong with the force you are, or whatever. And then when they made the later movies, every damn thing he says is in that backwards dialect. And it's like, dude, like Yoda is not an idiot. Like that was part of his charm, but you're overdoing it now. And I felt that way watching Bob Newhart with his little stuttering and stammering. I'm like, it's too much. Like he's like, I get that this is his style. This is what made him famous, but it seemed forced to me that every single sentence he says has to have that same little stutter or stammer. It didn't work for me as much.
It's not. Yeah. Again, it just wasn't good. I mean, I was excited to watch this one because it does live in my memory. Like, I remember being excited to watch a sitcom about comic books. Yeah. And it just was a huge disappointment in a way that felt like all the things I don't like about sitcoms, like very much. I was just like, oh yeah, this is why I don't watch these things.
Yeah.
Well, but it is also from that time where we notice this when we're watching, because we try to always do, sort of decades and give each era its due. The early 90s and the late 90s, like basically the 90s, right? When you look at sitcoms in the 90s, it's like all of the ideas that were worthwhile had been done. Sure. They were still in that, like, it's a family, it's an office, it's a this, very kind of stuck in their premises. And there's nothing else to tell. There's no stories left to tell. They aren't they aren't flipping things on its head yet. It's not interesting.
Yeah. Seinfeld has been on the air for at least 2 years at this point. Wow. Yeah, like their lunch is being eaten by a new creative show like that.
Right.
I feel like what this is trying to do is be like classy, quote unquote, like be a little low key, like there's not going to be a ton of slapstick. This isn't going to be Perfect Strangers or something.
Right.
But yeah, the problem, frankly, the wife seems kind of dull. Like, just all the people that he's like playing off of.
Yeah. It was telling to me though that this is the Friday night. This is in the Friday night lineup on CBS. So this is what they're trying to program against TGIF for kids and families.
I was going to say, CBS is the old
exactly.
network.
Definitely,
yeah, exactly.
Definitely, that
totally
tracks.
fits.
But why would you put on the old person network a thing that touches on like modern culture like
Well, here's the real question. Why did Bob Newhart want to be a comic book artist in his show?
Know.
Or was like it...
I mean, you said that reference.
I think probably because of that. And then the other connection is the reason it's called Bob, right? So he was on Johnny Carson as Newhart was ending. And Johnny makes the joke, oh, well, you've had the Bob Newhart show. You've had Newhart. I guess your next sitcom's going to be called Bob. Next season, Bob.
Oh, I'm not asking why it's called Bob. I'm asking why he would choose to do that. And they do a pretty good job of fleshing it out and contrasting his sensibility with the new stuff. There are a couple of laughs to me. I will say in the office scenes when I think it's Harlan who's trying to, explain to him, how he wants the comic to be. And he goes, Buddy must be eliminated so Mad Dog won't be distracted by his homoerotic desires. And then Bob goes, Once they went to a sauna, but they had just been through an acid storm, right? Because they're talking about when they bathed together.
Right.
So that stuff made me smirk a little bit.
And I think what you were saying about if the CCA code had a problem with the Batman Robin homoerotic tendencies, maybe that was the thing that got Mad Dog tossed.
Maybe. Although again, Batman and Robin obviously did not get canceled.
Yeah, so this sort of ends with so this is our new situation. Yep. This is going to be our sitcom.
They're going to work together on Mad Dog to make it whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, Bob is going to be old-fashioned and mild-mannered. He's going to be a contrast to this Harlan character who's younger and crazier. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that when I was a kid, I probably had a similar reaction to what I had last night of okay, I still like the idea. It wasn't super funny. Maybe I'll see what happens next time. But yeah, any other thoughts on Bob?
Bye, Bob.
All right, let's move on to The Simpsons.
Season 7, Episode 2, Radioactive Man.
Now, this is an episode that has lived in my mind for decades. Again, talk about that, I was gobbling up anything that was about making something or anything. Sure. This was totally in my wheelhouse. It's hilarious. And the funny thing now, so this episode is all about adapting a comic into a movie. The only reference at this point would be the Richard Donner Superman from the 70s. And
what year is this?
95.
And 95. And so the first few Batmans.
Right. And they reference the Batman, right? They
definitely.
were they don't want this to be the campy Radioactive Man
there's
from
a specific,
the 70s or
yes,
whatever.
Again, there's a specific throwback joke to the Adam West Batman. They actually do the little scene in this one.
Yeah.
But it's just funny to me how it's well, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of comic book movies that this is, reacting to.
So you've got Bart and Milhouse, and they are big fans of Radioactive Man. So when they find out that the movie is going to come to town and shoot in Springfield, they're like, well, we got to be in it. We're so excited.
So I watched The Simpsons back when this came out, and I haven't watched it regularly for a very, very long time at this point. But I also, as a fan of The Simpsons, read The Simpsons comics.
Oh.
And I got super confused watching this because I kept thinking, wait, when's the part when it makes the turn and we get into the story of the creator of Radioactive Man? And the answer is it doesn't happen. Yeah. That's in the comics. That was the thing that happened in the comics. They also did Radioactive Man comics, which I absolutely loved because the Radioactive Man comics, especially the very first miniseries, which was 6 issues long, but the issues were numbered as though the issue 1 came out in whatever, like a zillion years ago, and then the 6 issues are like 300 issues later, or and they each are done in a style of the time that they are imitating. Yeah, and it was really well done. It was really
they
really
don't
fun.
look like the Matt Groening.
No, they still do.
Thing?
They still do. But but with like a little bit of, I mean, definitely the storytelling is a little different. Like the one that is the 80s is like very much based on Watchmen, and it has a lot of like Watchmen references and. It was a really great miniseries, but this was a good show too. But I was confused the whole time, going, "Wait, when is this going to happen?" And then
in the show, they do get into the history of the guy who invented Itchy and Scratchy. But to my knowledge, and I haven't seen the last like 30 years of The Simpsons, but back in the day, I don't think they did that. But before we even get into the story of this. We didn't get this in Bob, but we're going to get in all of our other 3 sitcoms, the comic book shop, right?
Yes.
This one, I think it's called like the Android's Dungeon or something. Yep. But we got to talk about this briefly because I'm sure you have an experience like this. For me, growing up, every Sunday, my brother and I would walk. It was like the farthest place that we were allowed to walk to. It was like a good, like 2-mile walk. We would walk to a comic book shop called Who's on First. It was sports cards and comic books. And that was just like a staple of childhood. I feel like the comic shop it's a thing, So Jordan, what is your comic book shop life?
Well, first of all, I do want to point out it's Android's Dungeon and baseball cards, which is weird because it doesn't even mention the comics, but whatever. So most of basically, again, I've loved comics as long as I can remember, literally. So I took every opportunity that I ever had to be like, take me to a place that sells comic books and I will buy them. There was a convenience store at the bottom of a giant hill that I lived on top of for much of my youth that I would walk to and buy them there. But that wasn't enough. Like I wanted to go to comic book shops anytime I could. Yeah. If I was going somewhere, I would look through yellow pages. I'd be like at my grandmother's house. I'd be like, let's crack out the yellow pages and see what if they have a comic book shop nearby. And be like, oh, they do. So, like we should go there. And then in Binghamton, there was a comic store called Fat Cat Books, which I worked at for a bunch of time.
Fat Cat, I forgot all about
that. So I went to Fat Cat regularly and then eventually got a job there. And I got an enormous discount. And that didn't mean that I spent less on comics. It meant I got more for the amount that I spent.
That worked.
That said, it didn't have like the stereotypical like curmudgeon, like Android's Dungeon, really, necessarily.
You're getting to my next question. Uh-oh. So... comic book guy, right? I think that's like the official name of
it is his name.
Simpsons
We've never heard his real
character.
name, yeah.
So Jordan, comic book guy, offensive stereotype or lovable caricature? What are our feelings?
Both.
I would say or real thing.
No, I mean, he is a real person. It is still a little like, oh man, but he represents comic book fans at their worst.
Yeah.
So can that still happen? Yes. Does it still happen? Is it every second of every day? No. I mean, but we've all heard stories of like people who go to a comic store and say, I want to buy this book, and are like berated for their bad taste in comics. And it's like, oh, well, now I will never buy a comic again. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like those are things that have happened. And part of that is because the people who, not 100%, but most of the people who own comic book stores are comic book hobbyists who just love comics so much. They're like, well, I'll do a store then. And that, again, sometimes that results in amazing stores that are amazing to shop in. And sometimes it results in dingy dungeons that people are afraid to go into.
Well, and also, I guess the stereotype of the people who devote their whole lives to comics lacking in people skills or being like, curmudgeonly, like, I guess it's, like any other stereotype. It has some truth, but...
Right. I mean, look, my whole like feeling about this is that there's a gatekeepery thing, period. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of goes right along with oftentimes what it is to be a guy who likes things, because like it's something I've encountered in I was really into ska music for a while, and when I was in college, I worked at the rock radio station, same. Cool. And we would do shows, and I would do the stage announcing, and I would go to the shows, and never failed. It never failed. There was always some bartender, some roadie, some sound guy for whoever that was like at the venue who was like, "You're a DJ? Ugh, you like ska? Name 5 bands," right? Like there's always some bro that's trying to gatekeep. And that is like, when I hear about comic book guy, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a very universal kind of guy-based thing, unfortunately.
And his role in this is going to be to tell them that this movie is happening, right? We get this great recurring joke where whenever the kids find out something about the movie, their hats fly off.
That was a really good thing.
And it's like, I gotta get that the air handler.
First it happens in the comic book shop, their hats fly off, and the comic book guy goes, gotta get that air conditioner grate fixed. And then, later in school, when all of the kids find out that there's going to be open auditions for Fall Out Boy, every kid's hair flies up or their hat flies up, and the principal says, and the air conditioning vents will be fixed next week.
So Fall Out Boy, this precedes the band.
The band is named for that.
I would say, did they name themselves after
I
this?
assume that too. It's a Simpsons reference, basically.
Something I never knew because also was not a fan. But not true. Wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons. We've talked about it on the podcast before. It was on Fox. My parents were a no-go on early Fox.
1,000,000%. It's again another one of these things that's hilarious to look back on. The Simpsons being considered so immoral.
It was all because of the Bart Simpson T-shirts. It was all
because he said "eat my shorts," and my parents were like, "You're not watching that."
Shorts. Of all the things,
I'm an underachiever and proud of it. It was one of the T-shirts that they didn't like.
And also, sorry to bring up a terrible subject, it was very much a Simpsons versus the Cosby Show situation.
Oh yeah,
the moral center of the universe, the Cosby Show, which we.
Well, look who got the last laugh, right? Turns out Bart Simpson, you could get a little worse behavior than that.
Right?
But so we've got the Hollywood crew there's the funny scene where they're choosing where to shoot their film, right? And even though this is season 7, I feel like they're still relatively early in their thing about we're going to be cagey. We're going to make jokes about how we won't reveal where Springfield is. Right. So one of the producers is like, get me 3 plane tickets to whatever state Springfield is in. They're looking at all the ads for the local shooting locations, and they come across the tiny one that says Flim Springfield, and they're like, well, this town doesn't need a good ad or correct spelling. Let's go there.
They must be the best town ever.
The other one goes, I agree with that logic. So the whole thing is going to be the Hollywood crew comes to the small town, kind of like the movie State and Maine, if you ever saw that. So we're going to have the whole audition sort of subplot where Bart really wants to be Fall Out Boy, right? This is maybe my favorite joke in the thing where Bart is rejected because he's too short. And I feel like this is a joke template that persists to this day where somebody will go, congratulations, you win, is what I would say if you weren't a little bit too, people still do that.
If you were 1 inch taller.
Right. The guy goes, congratulations, you got the part, is what I would say to you if you weren't 2 inches too short. And Bart's 3-pronged approach to seeming taller is elevator shoes, vertical stripes, and a chihuahua.
And his hair is pointier.
Yes.
The points
he
on
spikes his hair more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that sight was hilarious.
Milhouse,
chihuahua.
not taller than Bart.
No, and I was like, that's interesting. Haven't noticed that he's taller than Bart, but okay.
Yeah, so Milhouse gets the role. It's interesting that they cast Rainier Wolfcastle to play Radioactive Man. So Rainier Wolfcastle is the Simpsons version of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they've had little bits with him here and there.
McBain.
Yeah, he's McBain, and we just learned about a movie, an early Chuck Norris movie called Lone Man McQuaid, that I was thinking I wonder if McBain is a little bit of a reference to that, even though he's mostly obviously modeled on Schwarzenegger. But here's the thing, I'm pretty sure this was before Schwarzenegger was in Batman and Robin. This was not... this wouldn't have mirrored any of the real life examples of casting a superhero movie.
No, it's another one of these Simpsons tells the future.
Yeah, well, and it's just we have this funny character.
Right.
So
I
think
it's them just playing their own continuity.
Right. Because they would otherwise it would be Troy McClure who they would have to cast. It's actually kind of weird that they don't get him in there. But yeah, they have.
They get that. They do get the Paul Lynde shout out, which is the Scoutmaster is played by that guy who sounds just like Paul Lynde.
Yeah, when they do have the flashback to the 50s show or the 60s show, they're fighting the Scoutmaster. That's their goofy bad guy. And you see this guy going like, go get him, boys. Don't let up, whatever you do. And yeah, I got that same impression. It was like the dad from Bye Bye Birdie. But yeah, and so then we're just going to get like a lot of fun stuff about them making the movie. So I want to ask Jordan, obviously you're involved in the comics side of it, right?
Yes.
Marvel. So I guess Disney bought Marvel outright a while back. And somewhere along the line, they started Marvel Studios so they could be making their own movies instead of just, licensing them out to Universal or whoever was making them. So I know you don't really have any direct involvement with the movies, but I'm sure that must... The fact that, all these movies are in the air, that must, interact with your life somehow.
We do interact with them. Like, they talk to us about what they're doing, and so that we can do comics that, not like based on what they're doing, but like in the sense of like, oh, they're going to put a lot of attention on these characters. So like, let's make sure we're doing cool stuff with them so we can sell comic books and stuff like that. So yeah, we interact with them and we talk with them, and yeah, it's a good time.
Here's the other thing I want to ask about the movies, and this is something I have always remembered about this episode. At the end, when Mickey Rooney is lecturing the townspeople, right, and he goes, they just wanted to tell a story. A story about a man, a radioactive man. Right? Now, what I would say is that was a true description of superhero movies until around 2012.
No.
This is what I mean by it. In this particular way.
100% no.
In this particular way. And I am curious about your thought about this. Prior to the Avengers, right? Because as we all know, in the comics, you live in the comic book world, you're seeing Spider-Man at breakfast, Captain America at lunch, and then the X-Men are going to stop by for dinner. All these crazy things are coexisting. In the movies, it always was, here's a movie about a guy that got bitten by a spider, and he is Spider-Man, and he is the one fantastical thing in this film. Here's a movie about a guy that dresses up as Batman. Here's a crazy guy. He's the Joker. And these are two really weird things that happen in this otherwise normal world. And that's what I mean when I kind of go back to that. It's just a story about a radioactive man. But then the Avengers, and specifically Civil War, Captain America Civil War, I think really legitimized like, oh no, now the movies are going to be like the comics. There's going to be 100 characters with weird superpowers all thrown into the mix together and just deal with it.
Well, it was, I mean, again, that was the innovation of Iron Man, and then the rest of the movies that followed it.
But Iron Man is still the one thing.
Again, until that last scene.
Sure.
Where they go, we're going to do Avengers. And then the next one that came out was actually a Universal movie. It was Hulk, but Tony Stark's in it. And
oh, yeah, he is.
And then the next one after that was probably Iron Man 2.
Yes.
Which then brought in Black
Scarlett
Widow.
Johansson.
And they started just, with every movie, we're going to tease that there's more and more of these things. And again, that was kind of a revelation that you could do something like that. That you could have a cinematic universe the way we have a comic book universe. DC was always the company that was successful in films in my youth.
Because of Batman, pretty much single-handedly. Superman earlier, that's true.
Whereas whenever Marvel would try something, it would end up so cheap and terrible.
What are you're saying that the Spider-Man movie from the 80s with the guy that looks like young David Hasselhoff and has to save the people from being hypnotized, like the same story as the Naked Gun plot where the guy is going to assassinate the queen? You're saying that was not as good as the Sam Raimi version of Spider-Man?
Or Howard the Duck.
Or Howard the Duck, or the terrible Dolph Lundgren Punisher, or the I forget
Corman,
who was
X-Men.
Fantastic Four. Roger Corman did Fantastic Four, although that was never officially released.
Right. Yeah,
that was literally made for, not a tax write-off. It was to keep the rights.
To keep the rights, okay.
And then what was the other one? Captain America. There was a terrible
with J.D. Salinger's son.
That's right. Wow. So So the idea that, but even DC, the successful company, like they never tried that. They never went like, let's connect them.
Because that was the thing. It was like
it was unheard of.
The comics had to come to the movies. It was an adaptation. It's like, all right, fine, we'll make a movie about Superman, but let's not go crazy.
Right,
we can't also have Wonder Woman.
Right. So from that point of view, yes, but everything else about that speech is 100% false.
But you appreciate that. Like, you don't mind, like, you like the fact that now the comic book movies are more like comics. It's not an adaptation.
Yes, because
they
still are an adaptation. But
right.
That's one of the best things about the comics, is that they are this shared universe, that it is, people like to say comics are modern mythology, but like there's a reason for that. Like they are a zillion people coming together and telling the longest ongoing story in American history, at least, if not like all time.
Yeah.
It's impressive. And the fact that the movies are trying to do that. I mean, honestly, like, if anything, the one criticism I have is it bums me out that they're so obsessed with a timeline, like that this takes place in this year and this takes place in this year, because obviously that is the thing we don't do in the comics at all. We go, Peter Parker was a teenager in the 60s and he's not 30 years old yet, so sorry, just deal with it. Whereas obviously everybody's going to age a lot.
Well, but now we have digital de-aging, right? So now just for a few trillion more dollars, you could do the same thing as you can in a comic when you draw them looking younger.
James Bond them. Just be like, whatever, here's a different actor playing the same role and don't worry about it.
I would prefer that too, but that's the trend now, is all the digital de-aging. But yeah, I mean, ultimately I've come around to it, but there was a point where I appreciated that the comic book adaptation still tried to be movies and not, like they tried to have like a higher bar of credibility or adultness, like whatever you would call it.
Yeah, but so much of that was based in this, a thing we're going to be talking about very soon, in about like the shame of comic books.
Yeah.
Like, let's not make this like a comic book. Like, that would be awful.
Right, because comic books are for little kids and they're not real.
And listen, comic books are for little kids. Like, I do want to clarify, not all of them. Not all of them.
There's also the thing of like, they're not real reading, right? Like, that's that's the
they can't be art. They can't be literature.
Yes, that's the thing in my life that I kind of see change, where like I used to have teachers would be like, no, you can't read a comic book. Now I have teachers who are like, let's bring in graphic novels. Let's see how, there's there's approachability, right?
There are graphic novels, there are comic books for all people.
Exactly.
For any person who wants a thing, they could, if they look, find the thing that they like in a comic book. Now, that said, when we're talking about Spider-Man, yes, this was a thing created for kids. And at some point it widened to also be appreciated by adults, and I do not think we should do a adults only Spider-Man film ever.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see if that ever happens, then I will be sad.
Yeah, it is just that slippery scale. It started with Tim Burton, let's put him in black leather, and then that's not dark enough, we got to keep going. But look, just a few sort of rapid fire moments from this episode, because it's The Simpsons, it's 90s peak Simpsons, so there's going to be tons of hilarious stuff. We get the little sight gag text things, like the slot car derby things where it says slot cars, 1/24th the size, 3/8 the fun, right? We get Milhouse's parents have already started spending all the money they think he's going to earn. So when he says, Mom, Dad, what if I'm not a success? And his mom goes, I can't hear you, son. I'm in my jacuzzi suit, because she's wearing like a full inflatable jacuzzi suit. I don't know if that exists. We get
I'm confident that exists. I'm confident that exists.
Okay.
It's probably awful.
Sure.
But I'm sure that's a thing.
All right. Well, we'll look at it. It seems like a Sharper Image type.
Yeah.
They would have it there. We get a Waterworld parody.
We do.
There's a point where when they show, the actual movie that they're making, they're in like a bird cage, and he says something along the lines of like, oh, we followed, what's his name, to his underground lair or whatever. But it's very clearly a Waterworld parody, puts us in the mid-90s. We get an old school film editing bay. I like that. It's just briefly, but there's a scene where they're editing the movie and you see the actual reel-to-reel thing. That's totally a thing of the past. And then we get the climax of this episode is going to be they're filming Rainier Wolfcastle as Radioactive Man. He's tied to something.
I love this.
And he's going to be drowned and burned in acid.
My eyes.
Now-
the goggles do nothing.
Yeah. Now, none of us, as we've established, are, movie producers or anything. I'm pretty sure this isn't how they really do it.
No.
They
Right.
use real acid. The director literally calls out like, all right, everybody, this is real acid, so make sure you have your goggles.
We get one take.
I mean,
costs
in the
us
sense, the
36
closest,
million.
right? The closest you have is like, this is going to be a real explosion. We're going to really
Yeah.
blow up this house, so we can't do it again.
Yeah, and
Right.
not only is it real acid, but they're relying on Milhouse as Fallout Boy to really save him.
Yes.
Like to rescue him in real time from this thing. It's like when you go to the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular,
Right.
and they're like, all right, everybody, here's how we make the movie. We're going to call action, and then Indiana Jones is going to run away from this boulder, and as though they shoot the whole sequence in like 5 minutes. And that is what this is like. And of course, Milhouse has gone into an existential funk, right? He says, I've said the phrase Jiminy Jilliker so many times that the words have lost all meaning. And so he's just like skipped out on the whole operation.
Right. He's hiding in the treehouse because he doesn't want to be a child star.
Yeah. So McBain is I don't think he's killed, right? But he's
No.
swept away in the acid.
Yes, and that's what he screams, my eyes, the goggles do nothing.
Yes,
which is
yes, that's
so
a classic
funny.
line. And now this is kind of prescient. They try completing the movie without Milhouse, right? They don't have digital
That's where the editing
techniques.
scene happens.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but they're like, don't worry, with the magic of editing.
Has the
So
crow
bad.
already come out at this point?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think this is maybe a reference to The Crow, which is kind of a macabre thing. But yeah, Brandon Lee was killed on the set of The Crow. They finished the movie without him. Now, The Crow is like a completely indiscernible movie. The whole thing is like pitch black, pouring rain. You can't tell anybody from anything in that movie. And here they just do the joke of like, yeah, we'll have somebody say something and then cut to Milhouse in a completely different scene, you know, answering. And yeah, that's pretty much, like I said, it ends with the film crew runs out of town.
They run out of money and they don't make the film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. It
Yeah.
gets shelved.
And
The
then,
end.
yeah.
It's the opposite. Well, the speech you refer to is the reversal, that you were supposed to think the big shots in Hollywood have ruined the lives of the small town guys, but he flips it on his head and goes, "Oh, these poor Hollywood people."
All they wanted to do was make a movie, and you just kept taxing them.
And then they like show up back in Hollywood and get like hugs and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they're like, we'll go back to Hollywood where the world is right and everyone's like happy and hugging and there's like lots of sunshine and it's all kind. And then, so Springfield is like the bad area where real people live that are mean.
Yeah. So we have very little overlap or crossover between these two that we've shown so far, but we also are sort of saying that in a weird way, like they both do sort of portray what they're showing, like somewhat faithfully,
I don't know that The Simpsons is particularly accurate.
Well, yeah, I guess there's nothing like, I don't know,
like none of what happens in The Simpsons is remotely realistic.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean,
they make movies. That part's true.
The casting call, like doing the kid thing.
Well, the funny part,
except even that, like isn't it usually bogus? Like, isn't it like they go like anyone can be Harry Potter, and it's like, well, this kid who was acting for a long time.
Yeah, they wouldn't have local auditions for Fallout Boy. They would have local auditions for like smaller characters,
the extras and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see what's in store with Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory, Season 6, Episode 13, The Bakersfield Expedition.
Yeah, so we've covered Big Bang a couple times.
Okay.
We've been... What's that?
Well, I'm excited. I'm champing at the bit here because this show is... Can we swear here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fucking terrible. This show is fucking terrible.
Interesting. Now-
it's reprehensible and I hate it.
Now, so is that an opinion that you brought
whole
to this,
show,
or is it
or
specific?
Before this, well, both. Yeah. Before this, I had only ever seen one episode of this show because I watched it and I was like, oh my God, I will never watch that show again. Okay. And of course I watched it for this. It did not change my opinion of the show at all. It verified my opinion of the show.
That's funny. I feel like expectations make all the difference.
Yeah, because you kind of went the other way, right?
Yeah,
you were not looking forward to it.
This is a Chuck Lorre show that he started after 2.5 Men, right? So by the time this came out, and I think we've been through all this on the podcast already, I was down on sitcoms in general, as we were talking about, a new Chuck Lorre show, no way. And yeah, I had a similar thing, probably caught little bits and pieces of it and just totally, dismissed it. And so when we've watched it for the podcast once or twice, I've been pleasantly surprised of like, going in with those low expectations. Oh, Sheldon's kind of funny. And it was better than I thought.
So I can understand that in the sense of there is skill to this show and there is humor in this show. There are jokes that are funny, but I hate it because it is a show that has pure and unabashed contempt for its characters based on innocent things. Like you watch a show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or Arrested Development, and those are shows that judge their characters because they're pieces of shit.
Yeah,
like they're
people.
shitty people.
Right.
This is a show that is like, oh, we are going to be merciless and ripping on these guys. Why? They like comic books. They're smart. That's it. And it's like, but it's not like, and it doesn't play like, no, but these are people who deserve ridicule who happen to have those things. It's like, no, it's very straightforward. That's why it's okay to make fun of them.
Yeah.
Because they are other. They are not normal. They are weirdos. And that's so shitty. I think that's just so shitty.
You're picking up on something that's so, because of course I love to read like the AV Club and a couple of these other places that will like do reviews of the episodes that we watch, and generally there's, it's up and down with Big Bang Theory. Well, with this episode in particular, I mean, the AV Club just excoriated the show. And they were like, the only purpose for this episode in particular was to make fun of nerd culture just because of nerd culture. Yeah. It was, I mean, the fact that they painted all women as not understanding anything about comic books when they walked into the comic book store and they're like, why are they staring at us? It was like no normal human was in the comic book store. Yeah. It was like at every turn they did this. But the article also made mention of how the episode just prior was one of the best episodes of Big Bang.
Well,
and so we watched the wrong one.
So before we get into this story specifically, just in general, it's interesting what you're saying. I guess my sort of like devil's advocate counterpoint is just like, isn't that what a sitcom is, or what a comedy is it's like we're just going to have characters that have these things that we find funny about them, whether it's because they're a little dumb or they're nerdy or they're uptight or anxious or whatever it is, whether it's Steve Urkel or Mr. Jefferson or whatever. Yeah. And then we just we let the humor spill from that. I guess here's what I'll say about it. What I like, I think, about Big Bang Theory, which doesn't seem mean to me, is when Sheldon, when the details of his weirdness, like his weird plans for things or his weird methodologies or the way he sees the world, sometimes when he's explaining that or when somebody else is explaining it about him to somebody else, I don't always see it as just like, isn't he weird? He sucks. Let's beat him up. It's more just like, get a load of these crazy details that they came up with for this, these funny details.
Okay. I mean, again, I haven't seen any of that. Whenever I've seen it, this episode in particular, they spend the entire episode going, he's annoying and he sucks. And then the girls are over there talking and the one who's dating him is mentions him and the other two are like, yeah, he sucks.
I guess maybe.
And also it's playing to an audience, no nerds, right, in that culture are watching this show, right? Well, this is playing to an audience. No,
this is a show for normal people. Yeah. This is a show for, and again,
exactly.
This is an era, okay, I'm going to say this and this might be way off, but I'm going to say it. This is an era when we're trying not to other people that we shouldn't be othering anymore.
This currently, or this where the show
when
is
the show
from?
is made, where like we're starting to go like we shouldn't really make like race jokes. We probably shouldn't make as many gay jokes as we used to. Like
we can always still make fat jokes, though.
Sure,
right?
Of course.
Yeah.
But like this is like going, but like we can make fun of nerds. They're just nerds. Like they like dumb things and they are awkward and dumb, and so this is a show for all of us normal people to be like, what's up with those nerds? Yeah. There's a joke in this episode, unless I'm misremembering it, where Penny makes a joke about how she was a bully. Yes. When they're talking about why they like comics, they're like, oh, because I think they were bullied, and she's like, no, I feel bad that I was mean to all those people, and it's like, but there's no judgment there on her.
That's
it's all kind of funny.
But
Everybody goes,
in general, I guess that's what I would say. I wouldn't really disagree that the show is geared more for quote unquote normal people, but a lot of times the humor that bothers me more is when they flip it, is because they also will, she'll be the butt of the joke, and it'll be like she's
they make
bad
a lot of she's
at,
dumb jokes.
Yeah, because she's
basically.
which they did with this one, with her not being able to read, and like her taking a really long time to read.
The reason why it doesn't rub me as wrongly is that Sheldon as a character to me, he seems so indomitable that he doesn't seem to be bothered by anybody. And so I just kind of get on board with him, sort of in the tradition of like David from Schitt's Creek, like one of these people, like, sure, maybe he got made fun of a lot in his life, but he seems like this force of nature within the show that like, it's just fun to watch him. And he doesn't seem to be the butt of the joke.
I don't think that he is necessarily the butt of the joke either. I think it's all of them. I think the criticism lands more on the other characters, on Raj and on, that's Howard. The same person, Howard. And because they're the ones who are like, look, at least we're not that, pointing at Sheldon, right? But
which puts him at the bottom.
Sure, but he doesn't care.
Oh, and he doesn't care.
And it's more just like...
and that's a tradition. Like you just have the dumb character. Like, I mean, what's the name of... Step by Step, the like cousin who lived in the van.
The Cody.
Buddy Lembeck as well.
His name was like Cody or whatever.
And it was he was just dumb all the time, and it was like, we just like this character because we laugh at how dumb he is.
Yeah, that's funny. To me, he's at the bottom in terms of his social skills, and that's the other aspect to the show. And granted, if there's ever a sitcom version of something, this is it. But he's meant to be a little spectrum-y, a little bit autistic.
Which I didn't want to touch on that, but my understanding is people don't appreciate that.
I don't know. Look, I worked with autistic kids for years. I believe myself to be mildly autistic at times. Like, I'm certainly not going to claim to be an expert on it, but I have worked with profoundly autistic students. And like I don't know, the idea of like, he's supposed to be a mostly neurotypical person with a little bit of those tendencies. Like, again, it's a sitcom. Our expectations are set at a certain level. I buy into it. And look, I think it's crazy I'm defending Big Bang Theory.
Yes, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
But my experience with it has been pleasantly surprising.
Well, and look, Big Bang Theory is at its best when it's about the heart, right?
Yeah.
When Penny has a realization that these nerdy guys that live across the hall from her are people she shouldn't have bullied, or have more to offer the world, or can teach her something. And when they realize she's not as stupid as they think she is, like when it has those moments of the coming together and like the humanness, which wasn't in this episode at all.
Not only was not in this episode, but was, I thought, like extremely avoided in this episode, in the sense that I'm jumping to the end, but like the way the episode ends is the girls have started arguing about comic books and the boys are like, what? And they're about to walk in the room. I'm sitting there going,
that's
scene
the
that follows is a scene of growth and understanding.
Exactly.
But it's one they cannot have in order to continue the show, where the girls are going to go, these guys are dumb because they like comic books for the rest of the series, which I assume is the case.
Yeah, well,
I mean, yes and no. You do like there is growth over time, but yeah, I think you're right. And I was bummed because when I wanted that next scene, when I realized it was the end of the show and we got that little like funny scene with the GPS and the guys who stole the car, listening to Sheldon's quizzes that he put in on the GPS. I was like, oh, that's the end. Like I wanted to see that. And oftentimes you'll get every now and then you'll get good episodes of Big Bang where they get to that and that scene's written, and it didn't do it in this episode, and I don't know why. I feel like in this episode they were just so excited that they had the guys in their like Comic-Con gear, and I mean, okay, so Sheldon looked amazing as Data.
Yeah,
like
it is funny that
the
only Star Trek character whose outfit was not totally convincing was Leonard's bald cap. It was like the worst thing.
Sure. Although also a little weird to me that, I mean, I get it. People wear Star Trek uniforms to Comic-Con all the time. But for an episode that entire concept is why do they like comic books so much, they were dressed as Star Trek.
Yeah,
guys.
I wondered if that was an intentional, like you get it from all sides. You get they're doing Star Trek, they're doing comic books.
Well, it's the layman's what is nerd culture,
sure.
right?
Yes.
It's throwing it all at it.
I mean, they definitely have experts on nerd culture because they're definitely stuff in the arguments. I was like, okay, that's accurate. Like,
yeah, even like the physics stuff that they talk about. Has
but I meant like, well, sure, I'm sure, but I meant like they were talking about like what things Red Hulk did, and I was like, I think I worked on that issue.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that the details.
I thought that was really fun. Like, I did not see that as where this was going either, because, and I have to say, like, meeting and dating Jay, as much as I have had, you know, friends and who have been into this scene, and like I could always like sort of I always had like a little nugget that I could throw into a conversation, you know, kind of the way you have a few nuggets that you can throw into a football conversation, sure. Right? I had those
touchdowns,
but you know, I would have a little nuggets of a little bit of this, you know, stuff that I could throw out and seem like I could hang in the conversation, but really was mostly quiet. Well, I thought it was really fun because when they started arguing over all the comic book stuff, because that's how I feel like when we go see horror movies, right? Jay is super into horror movies, never was into horror movies, but now I feel like I know enough and I can be like, the three of us stood in the parking lot of an Alamo Draft House at one point and had at least an hour-long conversation about
it was not an hour
about the different endings or what could happen if the purge was real.
Oh yeah. Well, Jordan famously the meme that men think about the Roman Empire for like 6 hours a day, that is Jordan's relationship with the purge.
Yeah.
But hang on, let's slow this all down.
We jumped through skipped
let's
the episode.
just basically this episode is called the Bakersfield Expedition because it's about the guys
going to the Bakersfield Comic-Con.
Right, which they explain the popular Comic-Con, San Diego and New York, those have gotten, and this is very true, those have gotten all about these mass market media things, the big movies and stuff. And this Bakersfield Comic-Con is going to be more like the old times. You go and meet the comic book artists and stuff like that. Which
so let's dress like Star Trek.
Yes, continues to beg the question why they're dressing like Star Trek. But so, yeah, that's what they're doing. There's this early scene where the three girls walk into the comic book shop. So this is our second comic book shop in our sitcom lineup. Do we know what this one is called?
Oh, they do.
It's owned by their friend.
They name check it in other episodes, so I don't know off the top of my head. But I think this guy, though, the guy that runs this comic book shop, undoes the stereotype that we were talking about before of the comic book guy,
yes,
right?
He comes across very normal.
Hey, first of all, dudes in the shop, like, stop being weird.
Well, everyone
Second
else in the
all,
shop fits the stereotype.
Right, exactly. But he's like, stop being weird. And also is like, if we want, like you were saying, if we want these girls to like comic books, let's give them ones that they'll like, and was pointing them in the direction of Fables #1.
The patrons of the store all like stop what they're doing and like, you know, are shocked to see women in the store. And then Stuart, the comic book owner, comes out and he goes, everybody, they're just girls. It's nothing you haven't seen in movies and drawings. Right. And so maybe he doesn't fit the stereotype, but everyone else in the store does.
Yes.
Penny is super into Thor, right? She says that Thor looks hot when she sees a Thor comic.
Well, he tries to get them to read Fables, which
is a great comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do they just not do it? Like, I kind of got the impression that they were going to read Fables, but then they don't appear to.
I think Penny distracts them with their Thor thing. Because
Yeah,
I think
she goes, oh, who's this guy? He's really hot.
because the joke is that Stewart goes, you might like this because it has fleshed out female characters and it's not stereotypical and all that. And then she goes, oh, what about this? Thor's hot. So it's supposed to be like...
Wait. Sorry.
Okay.
Do they buy 3 copies of the same book?
Yes.
Yeah,
oh my
because
God.
they read it together.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's... I mean, what are they supposed to look on?
No,
when
get 3 different books, man.
And then they can...
And swap.
They can compare, but that's not what they wanted to do. They were doing a close read. They're going to try and figure it out. But then they go into the guy's apartment and start looking for artifacts to answer the question.
Yeah, but when they're still...
Who can pick up Thor's hammer? What is the magic or whatever that makes it so that it's like, can only Thor pick it up? What if somebody picks up Thor when Thor's holding it?
Yeah, that ends up being their major point of contention. But before,
which to me is the only interesting part of the episode, the conversation where they're trying to come up with all these different ideas about what if this, but what if this?
It's very real.
I think that
that's
exactly
the part that's
the part I liked.
Yeah. I just wanted to call out the line when they're in the store still, and they're trying to narrow down what comic book to get, and Stewart's going, well, do you like superheroes? And they go, well, who's the best superhero? And he goes, you can't ask that. Do you want to start a rumble in here? I thought that was
a funny
bit.
That was a good bit.
Do you have a take, Jordan? The best superhero?
Spider-Man, obviously.
I mean, that's kind of what I was going to say.
It's Spider-Man. I mean, yes, there are people who would disagree. They would probably say Batman. There are people who I would say it's not Batman. I would not even say he's the best DC character. I think that's still Superman. But a lot of people don't understand Superman anymore. They misunderstand him, I think.
What makes Spider-Man the best?
Yeah, to me, it was just because that was the one I was into as a kid, and he's basically like the flagship Marvel character.
All of that is true. I mean, he's the one I was into as a kid as well. Why is he the best? Because I feel like he's the one that really cemented it as like we want the hero to be relatable. Because again, you look at Superman. Superman is not... Part of the problem with Superman nowadays is that people are like, well, no one can relate to him. He's like all powerful. And it's like, you're not supposed to. He's aspirational, if anything. He's going to take care of you. He's not going to be you. And Batman, again, Batman is a billionaire who has decided to
with a lot of trauma.
Short-sighted. There's lots to relate to. Being different, not fitting in, alienation.
There's always going to be that. But in general, his biography is not going to be a thing you relate to, and most of us not to Batman as well. Whereas Spider-Man was designed to be... yes, there's some details of like how genius he is or whatever, but it's like he's an awkward kid. Right. He's an awkward kid who gets put in this place, and his instinct isn't to become a superhero and do good all the time. His instinct is like, I'm going to get rich, and then that bites him, and then he loses someone he cares about, and then he learns this famous line that we all know: with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And it's beautiful, and I love it, and I think it is just the best superhero story around.
Now, have you seen the Stan Lee interview that was like in the featurettes for the Spider-Man movies and stuff, where he's explaining, like, he must be answering the question, how did you come up with Spider-Man? He's going like, well, I thought it would be funny. I thought it'd be cool if there was a bug. So I was like, Bug Man. That doesn't sound so good. Grasshopper Man. Nah, I don't know about that. Spider-Man. That sounds good. That guy, to me, everything you're saying about Spider-Man is true. Yeah. But I feel like almost the way like Matt Groening with The Simpsons, it's maybe like James L. Brooks, like the original idea.
Yeah. The people who made comics in the 60s, it was a job.
Yeah.
It was a job. I mean, the reason that there's been all of these lawsuits and stuff is that no one involved in any of that thought anything they were doing would last longer than a year. They were just like, I don't know, I got to do a Spider-Man. And then he like accidentally, I'm not saying there was no skill involved for either him or Steve Ditko, the artist. They accidentally created something so amazing that 60 years later, whatever it is, we're going like, this is amazing.
Yeah, but isn't it all the more weird that, like I said before, it's not just that it's still present in our culture, it's that it is the defining
it's one of the biggest
aspect
things
of our popular culture.
It was super weird. It's super weird, but I mean, it's worth it.
Look, when I was a kid, I tried to invent with a straw, like a soda straw, and a little balloon filled with glue, the Spider-Man web shooters, and I would try to like shoot, like I would fill a balloon with glue, strap it to my wrist, and just like mash it with my fist, so it would like shoot out glue through a straw.
It's amazing you never became an engineer.
Yeah, so I get the love for Spider-Man. So I would kind of have the same answer, but
what's your answer?
My only answer would be just that completely like stereotypical Penny answer. I like Loki because I think Tom Hiddleston's hot.
Yeah, sure.
So there you go.
Answer.
Not really a superhero, but
Yeah. That's it.
But so they've got their comics, they're back at the apartment, and that's where we get into the conversations that you guys were talking about, where they're like, only an idiot would talk about this stuff. Isn't it weird how the guys argue all the time? And so now that we're kind of fleshing it out, I guess I would challenge a little bit of what you said, Jordan, because what they're sort of saying is like, again, in this very rudimentary way, they're going like, you would have to be dumb to think about this at all. What kind of moron thinks about these fantastical things that are meant for children? And then the joke is someone goes like, yeah, whatever. Only Thor can pick up Thor's hammer. And then the other one's like, well, hang on. Right. Can anyone else pick up Thor's hammer? So I'm just saying they're trying to show...
I understand what you're saying in the sense that they're going, look, they're not weirdos. Like, these normal people do it too. Except I don't buy that, because I say, to me, the joke here in this scene is it got them too. The joke here is now these girls that were normal are dumb and weird.
See, I don't think it's that they're dumb and weird. I think it's that they're discovering, like, oh, it's like when I watch Dancing with the Stars with Amy, and I go like, you know what, this is kind of fun. I wasn't into it, but you know what, they're going like, yeah, it is interesting.
If there was understanding,
if
there was understanding at the end of it, I would maybe believe you.
But I think
we had that scene that you and I both wanted, which is the guys actually come in the apartment. You know, like we see them on the outside of the door. The last scene of the main part of the show is that they like get out their little Star Trek thing, voice things, and say they're going to go in.
Because there's the arc of the other side of the story. They go to the comic book convention. They stop to take some photos. Their car gets stolen. Sheldon tries to motivate them, being like, we are dressed like these aspirational heroes of Star Trek.
Right. Today we are Starfleet.
Today
we're stranded in an alien world.
And then he gets called a nerd. And
a slushie gets thrown at him like
waste
Glee.
Of a slushie.
Who does that?
Why would you buy a whole
on the side of the road? Come on.
And it breaks his spirit, and they end up in a diner where one of them is like, I still want to go to the convention, and the rest of them are like, no. This is all
Raj
pointless
still
and
wants
stupid.
to go. Everybody else is like, I just want to go home.
So, and then they get home and they can hear the girls talking, and they go, what are we, in an alternate universe all of a sudden? And then they go, no, we'll become Star Trek, and they go in. Now, here's the thing about that. There is a way to interpret that as they have lost their like spunk, and then they regain it at the end. But again, that's kind of the generous interpretation, and I don't feel generous towards the show.
Sure.
So my interpretation is much more like, because again, to me, this show is very much presented as these are others, these are weirdos.
Yeah.
So they come to understand their own weirdness, and that this is not normal, and that they should become normal.
Yeah.
And then they get home and like fall back into weirdness. And that is like now they have become weird again, not they have become good again.
The only humanizing aspect was that the girls did have this conversation, and then it made it feel like, I think for the guys, this was like, we're home and we're safe, and this is new. So like, we might not be accepted somewhere else, but we've got some acceptance here.
But yeah, all I want to see is them go in and then be like,
and have that moment.
See, comic books are they're fun and interesting.
Yeah.
Are they dumb? Yeah, but like, they're also fun and interesting, and you have a good time, and like, and then the girls can be like, I get it, I understand you a little bit better, and I won't be such a jerk.
Did you want the
time.
Leave It to Beaver ending?
I wanted because again, I watched lots of shows where you're supposed to judge the characters, and I feel like this show wants me to judge people unfairly.
Yeah,
this show wants me to judge people for a thing that I'm like, that's not judge-worthy.
I agree with you guys. It would have been great if they continued that, if they had that scene that you guys are talking about. But all I'm saying is I'm willing to give them credit for that whole progression where you're seeing the girls go like, well, wait a minute, what if the hammer wanted him to lift him? And they're going like, yeah, it could be like Harry Potter's wand, because that Harry Potter's wand can make decisions. Well, a wand is different from a hammer or whatever. Like, the fact that they're having them discover what is interesting about these crazy
things. But there's no self-awareness.
To me, that is the self-aware. Like, that's the story.
I mean, again, that would be the story if at any point they went, so this is what this is why they like it.
I think
never
they do.
No, they don't.
I think that's understood.
Well, that's understood by us outside. But again, I don't know that it's understood by all viewers, because I think a lot of viewers who aren't, you and I,
nerd adjacent.
Yes, we are aware of these arguments, and we hear it and we're like, haha, this is funny because these are the arguments we have. And I think there are lots of other people who are like, haha, they got the nerd bug.
Yeah, to me, I don't know, it's like one and the same.
It's not one and the same.
Because they took the time to flesh out the details about their argument.
Yes,
that makes it fun.
Because they have nerd experts on there. And listen, I am constantly, one of the big mysteries to me about the show is how there are like cool nerd people who are on the show and happy and seem to support it.
Yeah.
Like
Will
Wheaton is on it.
Wheaton is on
and
it.
like Felicia Day is on it. And like, and they're like, oh, like, and you know, they're happy. And I'm sitting there going like this, but like, aren't you guys like me going, why does this show hate us? Like, and apparently not.
Yeah, I mean,
look, I see what you're saying in that they didn't get there. They didn't have the realization that you wanted them to have, which is something that I have said a million times on this podcast about the dumb dads. Like the Ray Romanos, the Tim the Toolmans, I get so pissed off because they're supposed to quote unquote learn the lesson, but at the end of the episode, they never fucking learn the lesson. Exactly. They have to be the same character in the next episode, so they don't ever say it. And Jay always takes the position that like, oh, but didn't they just learn it? And I'm like, no, they fucking didn't.
Or it's more like I'm saying here, like you see the debate play out through the episode, and that's kind of enough for me.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is something that I have experience with.
Okay.
Because what are we talking about? We're talking about comic books. Mm-hmm. As we said, Spider-Man, been going on for 60-something years, and he can't grow up entirely. And there are fans who say he should, and I think they are completely wrong, because we shouldn't change the core of what Spider-Man is. We want Spider-Man to be what Spider-Man is for all generations, right? Uh-huh. So to some extent, he has to learn the same lessons over and over and again for 60 years. But the skill there comes in doing that in a way that feels satisfying in the moment every time.
Interesting.
And I don't think that this did that at all. I mean, this episode, again, hit the reset on the boys by the end of the episode. We saw it happen.
Yeah.
Like any understanding or change that they went through, they went, oh, we're back. The girls, we didn't see it because we don't see what happens when they go through that door. So we are left with them still having changed in some way, and then go, but they're not going to stay that way. Don't worry about it.
In my headcanon, to use another nerd term,
please.
All of those ladies from here on out just had a little bit more understanding and appreciation for the comic books. Well, they were like, yeah, they're dumb, but it's fun.
I'm never going to watch them to find out, so maybe. I suspect that the next episode they're going to rip on these boys for the exact same stuff they've been ripping on them for.
That is not the Chuck Lorre that I know and love. It is about nothing but growth and evolution and development.
Absolutely, that's right.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, why don't we move on to a much more comfortable conversation?
Yeah.
Woke.
Woke rhymes with broke. Pilot episode.
Yeah, so this came out... I remember watching it. I think it was during the height of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was 2020. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right after all of the Black Lives Matter headlines and everything. This was a very tense time in our world.
I had never even heard of it. I like saw that it was on Hulu and then it was recent. I was like, oh, is this like a new show? And then I saw it 2020. I was like, oh, and it's 2 seasons. How did I not even know this exists?
Yeah.
Well, and do you know Keith Knight? Like,
I don't.
No, he's a comic guy. He's a comic strip guy. He's got This is loosely based on his life.
This guy is a real cartoonist.
He's a real cartoonist.
Did you notice the credits are like the real life guy who created the show is the same as the character's name?
Well, the premise of the show is you have this comic book artist, this comic strip artist, yes, Keith Knight, who is based on the real Keith, so Keef in the show, and then Keith, Keith in real life, and he does the K Chronicles. So anyway, so in the show, though, this guy Keith, he does
Toast and butter,
and his comic strip is about to get syndicated, and he has kind of walked the line and has just sort of always been kind of a down the middle, kind of what some would consider a whitewashed black.
Yeah, he considers himself. We should mention, like we said, this is Lamar Morris from New Girl, Winston from New Girl, who we absolutely love. This is one of the funniest sitcom guys working, and yeah, he is very much like he considers himself like he is not racial in the work that he does.
Right.
You know, his stuff is not racially charged.
Right. And he's not trying to comment on it. It's just kind of down the middle. And then he runs into this woman who is played by Sashir Zameda, and she runs like a black artists consortium that wants to publish the comic strip that he does, and she's commenting on all of the like racial undertones that he has in his work. And he's like, no, not really, I don't do that. And this is all set up for him, sort of like, we see him as like living this life in San Francisco, post-racial, not this isn't a part of his life. And then bam, he gets profiled by the cops, slammed into the ground, and then is dealing with this trauma of, I was treated differently. I was treated this way because of the color of my skin. And my white friend, who was in like basically the same situation, was pushing the cops around. The cops put the guns away when they were dealing with my friend, played by that Blake from Workaholics, and but yet had the guns drawn on him. And so he just is like, the rest of the show is him kind of dealing with the fallout of this traumatic event.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you left out a key detail that he starts hallucinating.
He does.
Talking objects everywhere he goes that are pushing him towards racially based actions. Well, some of them. Some of them are trying, the Butter and Toast are trying to keep him in line.
Yeah.
Yes. Butter is Tony Hale.
Let's just point out, in terms of like production style, like we were talking about before, now we're in the world of single camera, cinematic type shows, and this show will fully take advantage of that, right? So this attack where Lamar Morris is going around stapling his flyers, he's appearing at a comic book convention. It's going to be a big deal. They're going to announce the syndication. It's like he's on the eve of this turning point in his career.
Yes.
So he's walking around stapling flyers. He's got his headphones on so he doesn't hear anything. And then you just see, basically from the point of view of the police officer, you see a hand just swat off his headphones, pin him to the ground. And the whole scene has this really subjective feeling with the camera right up on him and all the sounds all distorted and everything and all the kind of stuff that you would do in a movie to really amplify the feeling of that. And that's before we even get to all the crazy cartoons about the garbage cans come to life.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this show is just very much like we're far away now from the, Gary Marshall style old school sitcom.
Absolutely.
And it was super cool.
Yeah,
it was really well done.
It was so well done. I love, so to me, to watch this traumatic event, right, kind of change the trajectory of this man's life. And we're only seeing it in this short little snippet, right? There's 2 seasons of this. It is going to play out throughout the all of season 1, this event, and then we get a scene early on where he just sort of ignores and kind of laughs off this little microaggression where this guy is like, wait a minute, you draw toast and butter? I just never thought you were that tall. And it was like, obviously he didn't think he was going to be black. This is something
he gets all the time. It's important. Right. People are surprised that he's black.
Yes. And so it's just, he's like, no worry, it happens all the time, and blows off these microaggressions. But then as the time goes on, after the incident, he goes to a barbershop because he's like, I just, I want to be around culture, and walks in and the white hipsters have taken over.
Darnell's barbershop has been completely bought out by white kids. Yeah.
There's a scene in a movie where he
the right thing?
Yeah, where he throws the trash can at the window, and that was what happened when he throws the trash can at the window.
Yep, they offer him a complimentary Hennessy, I think. Yeah,
right.
The whole thing sucks. We also have, I caught it at the beginning, there's a montage when everything is still happy-go-lucky where he's going through his day and they're showing you all the things getting ready for his appearance and his syndication, and there's a quick shot of the photoshopping of his face.
Yes.
And that's another...
Oh, they showed them photoshopping it?
Yeah,
I did not
just
see
really
that.
quick.
Wow.
You can't really tell what they're doing, but then that comes up later in the episode.
And I thought they were just like getting rid of acne, getting rid
touching
of
it up.
fine lines
Now
and
that you
wrinkles.
said that, I do remember seeing that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Now
and
that
that's
you
all
say
you're
it.
meant to think at the beginning. It's like, oh, this is one of many shots, but I think I subliminally remembered it from having watched this back in 2020. That becomes a plot point. Another, it's not even really a microaggression, that this publicity photo
it's a
that they're
direct
making.
aggression.
Yeah, he looks like eerily white.
Yes. And it's funny because like as the time goes on, right? Like when he first holds it up in the office and he's like, and then when they get to the actual launch, they have the picture blown up huge behind him, and the way the lights are shining on it, he looks like Teddy from that Atlanta episode where Donald Glover goes in like full prosthetic white face to be like a creepy Michael Jackson skin bleaching character.
Yeah, it's super eerie. This is going to be depicting basically that there's like a break in this guy's mind, right? Where he is now, he's gone officially from naive to woke. And the way that they demonstrate that, like you said, are these little animated augmentations of objects. It reminded me of the Pixar short film, The Blue Umbrella. Do you remember that? Where it's this beautiful short film at the beginning of one of their movies where they just drew like little eyebrows and stuff onto umbrellas.
To me, I was just the like good and evil on your shoulder, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where it sort of starts, is like it sounds like these little objects are popping up and they're like, hey, didn't you recognize this? And so you've got the malt liquor bottles. Nicole Byer does one of the voices.
Oh, wow.
And they're talking to him and they're basically just saying like, this is stuff you knew all along. Like you've always been black. You've always seen these things. You've chosen to ignore them. You can't ignore it any longer. And you know what? Malt liquor will fix it. And so it's like trying to convince him to like drink the malt liquor and do the thing.
Throw the garbage can.
Throw the garbage can. Do the thing that is making a statement for how frustrated you are as a person who is being profiled.
Yeah, it's a creative way of like basically showing you his thoughts, and all the stuff that he's wrestling with. For some reason, it just like it came across to me as actually like not my favorite aspect of this. Like for some reason, and as an animator, I like that idea, and yet I just feel like, I don't know, something about somebody kind of doing a double take and having a soda bottle start to talk to them. I just feel like I've seen that before. And like I said, I can't
Roger
even really...
Rabbit.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's what happens.
Did you watch the whole series when you watched it in 2020?
Definitely not the whole series, but I watched a handful of them because I was surprised that this story ended when it did. I thought we were going to get a little bit of a taste of him politicizing his Toast and Butter comic strip, which we see him like, maybe he has the thought to do that at the end of this, and then they cut it off.
Yeah, so I think throughout this episode, it's just sort of him trying to come to terms with what happened. He doesn't. His friends are trying to convince him that woke rhymes with broke, right?
They say they want Toast and Butter Keith Knight, not Malcolm X Keith White.
Yeah, and his friends, his roommates are like, especially kind of like, hey, you've gotten this far by keeping it under the radar. Like, you don't need to be the angry black man. Just don't do it. Don't do it. And then it keeps building up.
So Shears Amade's on the other side of it.
Right, exactly. But she doesn't know what has happened. Right. And he doesn't talk to his girlfriend about it.
Right, yeah, that's because that's the other piece.
Yeah.
He's about to move in with her.
Right.
And
Yeah, does not communicate much in that relationship.
No, not at all. He's not able to talk about what happened to the people in his life because he's surrounded himself with people in his life that are not woke, in quotation marks.
Well, and he also just doesn't want to face it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to face it as well. But then the marker, played by J.B. Smoove, when he's
I recognize his voice too,
when he's doing his talk, the marker wins out over Tony Hale and Sam Richmond, or whatever his name is, with the toast and butter. And so he listens to the marker, and the marker's making fun of him being white-faced in the picture that's floating up
There's
above.
also an audience member in blackface as the burnt toast.
As the burnt toast. And he's just like, what is going on there? And so he asks him to ask a question, and he's like, now I have a question for you. What made you think that this was an okay choice?
Yeah, but here's the thing. His speech or presentation or whatever, it's not just like an angry rant where he reveals that now he's woke and he's not taking it anymore. It's a total meltdown.
Yeah, he like is punching at the
it's almost like Clint Eastwood at the Republican convention or something.
well, God, don't.
But the thing that's weird about it is Sashir Zameda's character is sitting in the audience watching him torpedo his whole career and just talk nonsense, and she's smiling like,
she's
laughing. You're finally getting it. You're finally on board. Like, this isn't good. You shouldn't be smiling at this.
Which reminded me of The Newsroom. Did you watch The Newsroom?
I did, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the first episode of The Newsroom.
Where she's going to hold up a sign?
Where
and then he doesn't know she's really there, and then,
That's funny. Yeah, but so he totally, like, he does that. I guess it's unclear, like, what the exact consequences of that are going to be, right? Like, he's probably going to lose his deal.
He
Nobody knows.
He says, I blew my career, but we didn't see the fallout of it.
Right.
Yeah, we just see him get home, and that's when we have the friends sort of advocating one thing, and it just kind of leaves us on that cliffhanger, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but we do get to see him meet the thief that he got mistaken for.
Oh,
who robs him.
That's
exactly.
right.
So he's like, I can't win either way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not white enough to like pretend to be what I've been doing all of this time. And yet I'm still, not this guy who's, getting on the street. But what we hear from the guy who robs him is that the video of him getting taken down by the cops has gone viral.
Yes.
That's how the robber knew and was like, hey, man, wanted to say thank you for taking the heat because that was me. By the way, give me your money. And then what we find out at the beginning of episode 2 is that not only did the cop video where he gets guns drawn on him and slammed into the sidewalk go viral, but now also his meltdown has gone viral.
Oh, okay.
And so the company that it was going to syndicate him wants to use that as a marketing tool.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of want to watch it now.
Yeah,
I
have
do
a
too.
feeling-
I'm so excited about this show.
Yeah,
and I'm
think-
bummed that I was in like such a pandemic funk that I never saw anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to team up with Sashir Zameda, and this is going to kind of be like Bob and Harlan Stone or whatever, right? They're going to be the team that's going to figure out the new direction for Toast and Butter. Now, is this something that has come up in your career in terms of like political, social, controversial issues, people wanting to bring that into the comics?
Oh, 1,000,000%.
With...
It's a very difficult and it's a difficult situation where you have to be really careful because yes, we are, people living in the world and we want to comment on it. And so much of what superheroes are about is connected to those kinds of issues. But at the same time, it's also, as we talked about earlier, a business, and you can't just run off half-cocked and piss off huge amounts of the public, right? So a lot of that stuff has to be handled very carefully. There's a lot of talk about doing things with metaphors and doing the Marvel version of a thing, rather than just doing the thing.
Yeah.
What's the superhero version of it? What's the X-Men mutant version of it? What's the Hulk version of it? I don't know what that is, but you know what I mean.
Right. Like in Wicked, the oppressed people, so the book Wicked, right? The oppressed people were the animals. Animals were able to speak and talk and function. They were, live in the world. They were professors and whatnot. And then when the wizard came in, the new regime was trying to say animals could only be animals. And then over time, they lost their ability to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the X-Men is like the easy example of it because they are oppressed for being mutants, which is a metaphor that is used for all kinds of oppression all over, where certain groups will be like, oh, that's about us. And at certain points it is, but at other points it's more based on this other group.
Yeah,
and other
even
points
just in the movies, you have every X-Men movie begins in a Nazi concentration camp. And then at some point it kind of shifts to be more of like a LGBT kind of metaphor. But yeah, that makes sense. Did Marvel have, like when this was coming out, 2020, like I said, multiple overlapping controversies and just a general like state of crisis in the world? Did Marvel Comics like react to that in some way in the comics?
Well, that's the biggest thing, is that like the company is not going to do anything like that. The company's not going to come out and go, here's our statement on
well,
an issue.
No, but did the world
creators
did
sometimes
those things impact the world of the comics?
Well, interestingly, COVID didn't. Okay. There was very much a conscious decision on that front to go, we're not going to do COVID in Marvel. Like we're
just
not going to
full denial.
Yeah. Well, have you guys? You've already had plagues, right?
Well, sure. There's been diseases and stuff. But I always did think that was a little weird. And well, first of all, I seem to be the odd man out because I was the one going like, I am interested in what all characters do in the pandemic.
It would definitely be very interesting.
Like I was sitting there going at one point, like during Succession, like what happens in Succession when they have COVID? Like I want to know, like what do they do in lockdown? How does that work? Like I'm interested in that for all those things. And most people though would say to me, you're an idiot.
They're just going to put on their PJs.
Well, not just that, but like they're going, you're an idiot. The audience wants to escape from that.
Right.
The audience hates that they're in their house. They don't want to see people in their houses. So Marvel did like a little cute comic called Heroes at Home that was just short comic strips. Speaking of comic strips, like joke strips, like of Captain America being at home and all his dishes are dirty, so he cooks the pasta in his shield and like stuff like that, silly things. But like in the actual proper continuity comics, COVID didn't happen. COVID never happened. And I was always like, but what about like 5 years from now when the world has changed because of COVID and we have to reflect those changes, but we don't show that COVID happened? And everyone went, no one cares. Shut up.
Yeah.
And
the world just changes. You're being too minute.
And to their point, what is it like? So Spider-Man needs to get another vaccine every year. Like it's not like there's that many lasting changes.
I mean, sure, you're right. It turns out it didn't change quite as much as I thought it would. But then like things like Black Lives Matter, again, you probably aren't going to find big Black Lives Matter issues with like Black Lives Matter protests happening, but there will be things that are based on that.
Right. Or just the general sort of like controversy surrounding the police and all that kind of stuff trickling in.
Well, so along those same lines, more looking back, because you guys have, at Marvel, you have such a long history of many, many different storytellers, right? Telling these stories. I'm sure that there are things that we're like, oh, that's problematic from 1966. Oh, sure. So what are the ways that you guys are able to kind of deal with that going forward?
Well, so if you mean like when we literally like reprint old comics, we don't like change them, but they do sometimes, just like Disney Plus will put up a little warning. We'll put something like that on reprints of comics where we're like there's things in this that are a little racially insensitive. But if you're talking about how do we deal with it in universe, we do our best to fix it if we can. This is I can give a tiny example, which is when I was the editor of X-Men over the last few years, one of the things that came up, and I was not aware of this, is there's a character in the New Mutants called Karma. And she's Vietnamese, and her name has always been presented as Shan. They called her Shan. I was not aware of this. Someone else was working with a Vietnamese writer on it, and they were like...
That's a Chinese name.
That's not a Vietnamese name at all. Like, can we fix that? Mm-hmm. And we were like, oh... wow. Okay. Yeah. And so we did a story where the character kind of goes, yeah, like, my friends were calling me that. And like, people call people things and I accepted it and it's fine. But my real name is, it's like XU''AN, I think. I'm so sorry that I don't know.
No, but her real name's something else.
The point is that we went, yeah, of course we should do a story where we try to correct that. And so that's just a small example. Yeah. And it's kind of a bad one. I didn't edit the story where that happened, but because I was X-Men editor, they were like, can we do this? And I was like, absolutely do this. That is definitely a thing we should do. So yeah, we just kind of reckon with them on a case-by-case basis. Also, you mentioned the comic book stores. So this one This one has a really hip comic book story.
Oh yeah, thank you.
This is like not at all the stereotype that we saw in the two ones previously.
That's probably why I said
nice,
Brooklyn was this comic store.
This is a really nice, cool comic book store that is interested in like newer readers and sophisticated readers, and
it's got like a record store kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's where you would cross paths with someone like Sashir Zameda, you know, not a place where they, you know, their tongue falls on the floor if a woman walks through the door.
It's a woman working at the store, if I remember correctly, kicking out Keith's friend.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, right. With the friend who's always trying to pretend to be like a basketball player or a baseball player or something.
Yeah, my note on him was that, you know, we're talking about, is every half-hour comedy a sitcom? They get less sitcom-y as we go. I feel like his character is like a nod to the traditional sitcom, a cad of a best friend who's always lying. All right, so what do we think? Looking back over these, so Jordan...
Yeah.
You love Big Bang Theory, but setting that aside, any sort of, I'd say, A, just general thoughts, best, worst, MVP, and B, do you feel like, you know, the fact that your real life is so tied into comics, did that color the way you experience these, or is it just sitcoms?
Best one I thought was Woke by far. Like I said, it made me want to watch the whole show. So there's a good chance that I'll finish the series at this point, or at least try going forward on it.
Yeah, same.
You know, The Simpsons I'd probably put at number 2 because it was solid. It's like old school Simpsons when it was good, except I'm sure it's still good. I just don't watch it. Picking number 3 and number 4 is hard because straight up, which one is the lowest quality? Absolutely Bob. Like Bob is by far the lowest quality of the 4, but
it doesn't offend me.
It does not offend me.
We should give you a fake laugh track just for that.
I mean, it's bad. It's a bad show. Yeah. But yeah, I also really, really hate Big Bang Theory. So there you are.
All right, fair enough.
But it had better jokes. It was better made. Everything about it was better than Bob. Other than that, I was personally offended.
And you feel like your proximity...
Other than I felt attacked.
My proximity to comics, but even before I was a comic book fan, even before I was a comic book creator, I feel like I would have been offended as a comic book fan. Like, this is a show that I would not... It's a show that, like... My wife's parents watch and are like, hey, look, we understand you. We watch Big Bang Theory. And it's like, no, we don't watch Big Bang Theory. We don't like that.
That's just made for you to try to think that you can maybe understand us.
Yeah, well, or to make it explicit, this contrast between Big Bang Theory versus Woke, you know, one of them is literally like the outside looking in and vice versa. You know, one of them is about nerds by, you know, or so we're accusing, by a normie that doesn't get them. Whereas the other one is straight up the comic book artist himself, you know, making the series.
Yeah, I think Woke has a really interesting premise. What I've read about it just in preparation for this was that it never really actualized into the story that it is promising in this first episode, which is why it only lasted the 2 seasons, but that's okay. Like I'm still excited to watch it. I want to see what they do with it. So, you know,
I will say on some level it is a little bit apples and oranges to compare them in that respect because they're making fun of nerd culture, and Keith Knight is not presented as nerd culture at all. He's a cartoonist. Well, like he's a skilled guy who is very good at what he does, but he's not a fanboy.
But I think it's also the difference, like Amy was saying, how things have changed over the course of time.
That's true.
Where the idea of like, hey, everybody, this guy reads comics. This guy's a comic strip artist. Like that's not a dig anymore. Like that's a cool job to have.
No, and at the school where I work, I work at a K-12, and in our elementary school and in our middle school, we have graphic novels units in multiple grade levels, and our students are writing their own graphic novels in 7th or 8th grade, which is something that like never would have happened when we were in school.
Yes, the kids' graphic novels boom is real. Like I was at a bookstore yesterday with my family, and like, there's a huge section of kids' graphic novels in a Barnes & Noble. By far bigger than the like superhero graphic novel section, and the manga section is also much bigger than the superhero graphic novel section.
Yeah, to me, Bob was definitely a huge disappointment, as we've all said. And the Woke episode, that is really good for sure. But it's like we say every time, like those kinds of shows are very rarely the MVP for me, and just to be totally clear, when I say those kinds of shows, I mean modern single-camera sitcoms. Because, it doesn't scratch that itch of the goofy old sitcoms and the, all the crazy jokes and staging and everything. Like, we basically saw the first 20 minutes of a movie, and so it looks like it's going to be a pretty good movie. But to me, I would absolutely give it to The Simpsons.
Oh, thank God.
I
thought that's where we were heading.
No. Well, look, I'll say that I like the Big Bang Theory more than you guys did, obviously. Yeah. I don't think we need to relitigate it. I thought it was fun to watch the girls get into the discussion or
that
whatever.
That was fun.
Yeah, that part was nice.
Yeah.
And I didn't dislike the show, but I have seen better episodes. And so, that's what I'm saying. All of the criticisms that you're saying, I'm like, oh, I totally hear that. And like I said at the beginning, the internet was very offended by that episode. Like, just the gender stereotyping of girls not liking comic books or understanding it at all. They're like, that wouldn't be Maya Bialik's character, that doesn't necessarily even make sense for her. She would 100%, be the other way. So
yeah, no, I totally get all that. But yeah, The Simpsons, stone cold classic. It's one of those episodes where it's like you watch and you go, how the hell was that just 22 minutes? I feel like the comic book store scene up until the audition could have been like a 3-episode arc or something. They've got so much
into it.
Yeah, it's just so dense with humor and with actual story. Yeah, and like I said, it's just the way it's like they do such a good job of spoofing the comic book stuff that had come and sort of predicting some of the stuff that would come later. Just total classic. And so, I don't know, just in general, in terms of the way that sitcoms see comics, the only real insight I would offer is, again, it starts as it's kind of a nerd thing. And so it's sort of a shorthand for that. You see that, in the Big Bang Theory and the Simpsons to an extent. And then how it sort of morphs to, by the time we get to Woke, it's like if you're making a sitcom about a comic book artist, you're making a sitcom about a cool guy, But that's kind of the only overarching thing I can really think of.
And then you've got Bob, which is also kind of a weird outlier there too, in the sense that they don't spend a lot of time going these are for kids.
Yeah,
and he's got this weird fondness and pride in what he did, in a way that, again, I don't even know that all of the old time creators would necessarily have, because like I said, a lot of them were just like, this is a job I did.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what made me, when you said that, I was like, oh, that kind of tracks with the way Bob is playing his character, as it's like, oh yeah, this, I'm an artist. I did this for a little while. It didn't really work out. I've been doing greeting cards for 30 years,
Wait, what was your favorite?
Oh, 100% Woke.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to go and watch the whole series. I'm very excited about it. The Simpsons, I'm always like, I don't have the nostalgia factor with The Simpsons because I didn't watch it. And usually I'm pleasantly surprised. And this one was just kind of even for me. I wasn't like, oh man, that was really good. Like when we watched the Streetcar Named Marge episode, that was amazing and I loved it. But yeah, this one I was just kind of like, okay.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I guarantee to the listeners that every future guest will have this level of expertise and be just as intimately involved. So much for the comic books. Amy, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're going back to college. We're going to watch The Hogan Family, Season 4, Episode 1, Animal House, Family Ties, Season 3, Episode 3, Little Man on Campus, Saved by the Bell, The College Years, Season 1, Episode 3, Zach Lies and Videotape, and finally, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Season 4, Episode 3, All Guts, No Glory.
Yep, that is next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.